Just for everyone watching, hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Jennifer Thompson, your co-host of today's Summer Festival events, brought to you by the San Diego Writers Festival in partnership with the Coronado Public Library, Warwick's Books in La Jolla. You can buy all of the books mentioned today there at Warwick's online, and of course, the San Diego Memoir Writers Association. Today, we are celebrating storytelling. Speaking of, we are excited about this next panel. I know we just talked about it, but it's featuring 4 of our original keynote speakers who I think are all on screen now, everyone. Jan Eliasberg, Joe Aday, Dr. Catherine Grace Pope, Eilene Zimmerman. This is gonna be amazing. And I wanna let everyone know, this event is brought to you and sponsored by the Jane Project, Inspiring Creativity for Kids. It's an amazing project. And by the way, right now is the time that you can enter to win a free copy of one of our keynote panelists' books. There's a comment going to appear. It's going to be pinned to the top. The first 35 people who complete the giveaway form in the comment section below will win a free copy. Moderating today's panel is our very own lovely, amazing, my partner in crime, my co-host, my co-founder, Marni Freedman. Marni is a screenwriter, a playwright, an award-winning author. She's a writing coach, and as I said, she's my co-founder of the San Diego Writers Festival. After graduating from USC Film School, Marni began her career bringing her play Two Goldsteins on Acid to the stage, after which it was made into the film Plain Mona Lisa, which by the way was produced by Disney. She co-authored the play, A Jewish Joke about a 1950s comedy writer facing the Hollywood blacklist, which won the New York Solo Show for Best Drama, Critics' Choice for the San Diego Union Tribune, and was recently produced off-Broadway, which was pretty exciting. Marni leads the Memoir Certificate Program for San Diego Writers, Inc., produces the San Diego Memoir Writers Association's theatrical Memoir Showcase, and is an editor of Shaking the Tree, short, brazen memoir. She's also a writing coach and a therapist for artists and writers. Her first book, 7 Essential Writing Tools That Will Absolutely Make Your Writing Better and Enliven Your Soul, is an Amazon bestseller. Her second award-winning book is Permission to Roar for female thought leaders ready to write their book. You can find that book at marnifreedman.com. And also she has a writing hub. So go join Marni. And Marni, welcome. I know you've been here all along.
It's hard to listen about yourself, but
I know, right?
So
but it's important for people to know how great you are.
Well, I'm very delighted to be with this panel today. Thank you.
This is exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. This panel, the reason why I'm so excited about this panel is because I am genuinely passionate about these 4 authors and about their books. You know, you guys know I'm all big fans. And so I want to talk a little bit about the books, and we're hoping that you guys will do some reading. So the first one I wanted to bring up is Jan Eliasberg's Hannah's War. It has everything, has mystery, spies, romance, intrigue, escape, which I kind of loved right now, war, splitting the atom, discussion of where women are at in the 30s and 40s and not getting credit for their work. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about Hannah's War and what messages you were exploring. I kind of saw some things that were similar to some of the struggles that we're going through today, but wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. You summed it up very well with that sort of potpourri of things, but the initial inspiration for the book was actually a little article I saw in the New York Times on the day they reported the bombing of Hiroshima. And it said that the key component that allowed us to develop the atomic bomb was brought to us by a female non-Aryan physicist. And as a woman, as a feminist with a daughter, always looking for women who've been erased from history, I thought, I can't believe I don't know who this is.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the initial inspiration. So that's very much a part of the book. But also, I ended up becoming just fascinated by this race between the Allies and the Americans to develop the atomic bomb, and the idea of scientists and what their obligation is when they are in the midst of a discovery that they realize is certainly as destructive as the atomic bomb. There are some very interesting political questions and moral questions that I explore in the book about how the bomb ended up being dropped and why, and who was in control and who was being manipulated. And ultimately, the theme that I would like people to take away is that the actions of one person can actually change the world.
And she did. And I love that you found her, you know, at this time that was just, you saw this one line and then were able, you know, I kind of feel like she was calling to you on some level, like for her story to be told. And I jumped the gun because of my excitement. So I want to go back and properly introduce everybody. We get a real introduction. So we'll start with Miss Elias Berg, award-winning screenwriter, film director. Jen Eliasberg is now turning her hand to fiction. You have another book coming up, I've heard, taking her long-standing talent for portraying strong, independent female characters and for orchestrating rip-roaring, fast-paced drama and action on screen and bringing it to the page, like Hannah's War. Elias Berg wrote Hannah's War to give an unsung, brilliant female scientist her due that she just talked about, Lise Meitner. And she's a film director. She's inspired by the life and the genius of this Jewish-Austrian physicist, Lise Meitner. It's a nuanced answer to those and other important questions about scientific discovery, patriotism, which right now we're all processing on some level, morality, love, and loyalty. In giving a voice to Dr. Meitner's experiences, Elias Berg wanted to correct the historical record and to enable her own daughter and her peers to see that history is filled with remarkable women of towering achievement and of deep humanism. And we need only to look into the authorized text to see them. She says, "I wrote to shine a light on one of these women, and I hope Hannah's War will be a beacon for all women." And it truly is. Next, we'd like to introduce Miss Eilene Zimmerman. Wrote an amazing book called Smacked that we had on the screen just a moment ago. I read this book and I was brought in from the first moment. She really had a knack for making it read like a novel. Eilene has been a journalist for 3 decades. She's covered business, technology, social issues for a wide array of national magazines and newspapers. She's a columnist for the New York Times Sunday Business section for 6 years and has been a regular contributor to the newspaper. In 2017, Zimmerman also began pursuing a master's degree in social work. She currently lives in New York City. And before the pandemic, she was touring around, talking about her book and really starting this important conversation about white-collar addiction that was really not something that's not talked about. So welcome Eilene to our online festival.
Thank you. I'm so glad I can be a part of this.
And then next, I would like to bring on Joey Day. So this is a series, his debut novel, IQ, exploded on the scene and proceeded to win the Seamus McCavity and Anthony Awards for Best First Novel, while also being nominated for the Edgar Award, the Strand Critics Award, and a Barry Award. It's also no surprise that he's been called the Elmore Leonard of a new generation and the best new discovery I've come across in a long time, according to none other than Michael Connelly. It's a series that if you start it, you will not put it down. It's a writer's delight. It's just so much fun to dive into the pages. For me, I thought it was like a verbal masterpiece graffiti, just so rich. Every sentence was so rich, and also beautiful plot. So he just marries all of these skill sets in such a beautiful way. So would like to welcome Joey Day to our program today. And then if you weren't around before, we got to give a community award to Dr. Pope. And Dr. Pope wrote a memoir called In Search of the Crown. She was, I'll read her. She's a teacher, she's an author, she's an advocate for children. She holds degrees in speech and language pathology from the University of Nebraska. In 2015, Dr. Pope published her autobiographical memoir, In Search of the Crown. Her courage during the civil rights movement while reigning as Miss Omaha led to the establishment of the Black and Women's Studies program at the University of Nebraska. She's received multiple awards, including the San Diego County Education Leadership Award from the Association of Afro-American Educators, and a special commendation for her leadership from the city of San Diego, addressing issues related to intersections of culture, race, ethnicity, teaching, and learning. So welcome, Dr. Pope. It was great to be able to honor you this morning. And I wanted to just ask you, a lot of people right now are struggling with what you struggled with. In a way, what you wrote about is very fresh. And I wondered what your thoughts were on where we are today, and any notes for writers out there, what we can do.
I think, and I believe, we are really venturing out on some new levels. We have crossed these paths before many times, with many races assisting us in our struggle, but this time it is going to go to a new level. It is the level that will embrace politically the issues, legally the issues, and hopefully as far as going to the Supreme Court. So young people are now becoming more active in what they're doing and venturing out and trying to make a difference. And when I was 19, even before, I tried to make a difference. I went with my mother on different events where we participated. We even participated and went to George Wallace's event when he came to Omaha, and we were maced and knocked down and spit upon. But from that, I learned that I had to participate and make my voice heard. No matter what the venue, I couldn't be silent. And even though I was Miss Omaha, running for Miss Nebraska and the Miss America pageant in 1969, I knew I had a platform. And so I had to use that platform to express our concerns. And I wanted, to be honest, very honest, young Black girls to see that they too were beautiful, because beauty goes deeper than just superficial. It stands for something racial in our nation that really needs to be addressed at all levels, because we are the girl next door. We do make a difference. We're everywhere in this society. And I want young women, young girls to know that they are beautiful.
What a treasure you are to have you at this moment in time. It's been such an honor. Would you do us the honor of reading a portion from your book?
I'd love to. This portion is taken from going to the event of the Miss Nebraska pageant, and I called it the chaperone. It's in the particular section called Miss Nebraska pageant 1969. There was an invisible line between me and the other girls. I saw it in some eyes as I waited to sign in. The stakes were higher than they had been in the local contest. Girls were sizing each other up, and they had already categorized me, but I couldn't change the color of my skin. They were losing an opportunity to enjoy a relationship with someone different from themselves. They never approached me, never introduced themselves. I tried to make excuses for them, but I didn't approach them either. Instead, my eyes swelled with tears as I watched the other girls begin to get acquainted. They smiled, talked, and laughed. Now and then I would catch one of them looking toward me as she wanted to come over and talk, but she wouldn't. But there were a couple of girls that also seemed to feel as awkward as I. Our eyes connected and we smiled at each other conspicuously. That gave me some comfort. Well, you must be the girl from Omaha. I had reached the front of the registration line. I smiled at her. Yes, ma'am, I am. She kept talking without looking up at me. To me, she was being rude. I could hear my mother's voice in my head. Anything worthwhile takes time, and you have to be tolerant. Patience and tolerance were always challenges for me. But I took a deep breath, and I kept the smile on my face. After the paperwork, we were told to go to another line to meet the chaperones. By this time, I didn't want to stand in another line. The girls were watching me and whispering while they stared. For some reason, I had the name of my chaperone in my purse, so I asked my Omaha chaperone, Mrs. Elrod, if we could just head for her house. She agreed with me, and we left the auditorium. All the while, I was feeling like I was in the second act of a badly written play. It was around noon, and the sun was beating down on us when we arrived at my chaperone's house. Mrs. Elrod and I were anxious to meet my host family. I stood dripping in sweat at the door, waiting for someone to answer the door. We rang the bell a second time. No answer. I kept wondering if we were at the wrong house, or maybe the doorbell wasn't working. Jerry went back to the car to get her address book, stood for a while, and looked up at the numbers on the small wood-framed house. I'm certain that this is the right house, she called out to me, loudly enough for them to hear inside. The family who had agreed to house me and keep me safe and secure for 1 week had backed out in a most cowardly way. What more did I need to know? Mrs. Elrod came back to the door, and this time she knocked while I rang the bell. All the while I kept thinking, am I dreaming, or is this really happening to me? If I'm dreaming, I need to wake up right now.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much for reading that. I want to turn to Eilene, kind of what Dr. Pope was talking about, and I think in many ways what all of your books talk about is being the outsider. And in Peter's case, and your husband, ex-husband, who you took on the role, I watched how you talked about him so endearingly. He wanted so much to belong, and when I was reading each one of your books, I really thought about the concept of belonging and being an outsider. And so how Peter wanted to belong so much that he was willing to do anything to keep it going. And then on some level, how you were an outsider to your own story, not really knowing what was going on. I was wondering if you could tell the audience a little bit about your book and any thoughts you have on that.
That's so perceptive. I don't usually get asked about that. So the book is about, I lived in San Diego for many years, and I'm from New York, so I have the accent, but, I raised my kids and had them in San Diego, and my ex-husband was a partner at a very prestigious law firm based in Silicon Valley that has a big office in San Diego. It's Wilson Sonsini. And he was a partner there. We had been divorced 5 years, but we had a very kind of codependent divorce. We had 2 kids that were going from adolescence to teenager to college. And so we were very interconnected, and he had become increasingly sick and erratic and just disconnected, and had all this bizarre behavior for about 1.5 years. And he had become also increasingly sick with what I thought was this like low-grade flu that he could not shake. And he had all of these reasons why it was so. And eventually it got to a crisis where our kids were there for the weekend, and he had been in his bedroom the whole weekend, really sick and vomiting and unable to eat, and yelled at them, and they left. And I kind of decided, like, that's it. I'm going up to his house in Del Mar, and I'm going to take him to the emergency room. And, and like in all good mysteries, I got up there and I found that he died on the floor of his bathroom. And in hindsight, what I found out that day was that he had been an intravenous drug addict, or was struggling with an intravenous drug addiction. Is really the right way to say it. But I didn't know that, even though in hindsight, he had every symptom in the book and I was staring it right in the face. And I think the stunning thing about his story is that he was so successful outwardly. He had 2 advanced degrees. He was a chemist and a lawyer. He'd gone to an Ivy League school. He was very, very good at what he did. And he earned a lot of money. He had this beautiful house at the beach in Del Mar, sort of like everything he ever wanted. But of course, the thing that he needed, he wasn't getting. Whatever that was, he was not being fulfilled. And so he had turned to this. And, but I'd made every excuse for him. I go, it never even occurred to me that it would be that. I thought he was bipolar, maybe he had an eating disorder, maybe he was just being a jerk. And I wasn't alone, because everyone in his life, his colleagues, his friends, his rest of his family, my kids, he was basically killing himself in front of us and we did not see it. So the book starts with me finding him, and it sort of does read like a mystery. It's me trying to figure out what happened and what I didn't see. And then there's some reporting about other lawyers and people in finance and people in technology that are using quite a bit of substances to get through the day, and some who are in recovery, some who are not. And I talk about what's going on in that world a little bit. So, and then to address your question about Peter feeling like an outsider, he grew up very poor in Buffalo, New York. And when I met him, we were both really broke and just, he wanted to get a PhD in philosophy of science and do all this stuff. And he wound up deciding to become an attorney. And I think once he entered that world, he never really felt like he was on the inside of whatever that was, whether it was old money, new money, just kind of this white privilege. Even though he had it, he grew up in a very poor neighborhood. It was African-American. It was in Buffalo. His father was a minister and evangelical. And he had rejected all of that, but I think it was still who he was. And so he wound up comparing himself to everybody at his level. And so our kids were put in private school. He bought nicer cars. He bought better houses. He bought better alcohol, and then when we split up, I think the differences became very stark. I kind of stayed in our middle class life, and his earnings kept increasing and he sort of skyrocketed. But I think there was this definite disconnect between what he was trying to be and who he really was. And I don't think he was ever able to reconcile the two. So that's very true, Marni.
Would you mind reading a little bit from your book?
No, I'd be honored. Thank you. So I'm going to read a little bit from the prologue, which is short. And this is me on my way up to Peter's house, and it's to save him, is what I thought I was going to do. I plug in the code to the gate at Peter's house, and the door swings open to an expansive rectangular backyard. The grass is mostly brown, the $20,000 fountain in the center no longer burbling, its white stones covered in algae. I go to the front door and put my key in the lock. It's made of heavy glass and makes a whooshing sound as it opens, like the door to an office building. There's a staircase immediately in front of me that leads to the main floor, and to my right is the only room downstairs. It was intended to be a family or rec room and has a glass wall facing the yard. I always thought it would be a great place for a party. Now it's been converted to a bedroom for our daughter, Anna, who is home from college for the summer. She stays here at her dad's house a few nights a week. Down here, she has more independence, as well as her own bathroom. The bed is unmade, clothes and a bath towel litter the floor. Anna hasn't been here in 2 days. Neither has our son, Evan. I call out, Peter? No answer. No sound from upstairs. Peter, are you here? I climb the stairs to the main floor. It's perfectly quiet and still. I take a minute to look around. The house is an architectural trophy made of steel, wood, and glass, all sharp angles and sunlight. Through the windows, I can just make out a white line of seafoam hitting the beach. I turn toward the kitchen. On the counter immediately to my right, there is a large, nearly empty takeout soda, the kind you get at a convenience store, some candy wrappers, piles of work papers, an asthma inhalator. Peter has been sick for more than a year with some kind of ongoing low-grade flu, constantly exhausted and weak. He's lost 30 pounds, maybe more, since we split up 5 years ago. But in the last 6 months, it's gotten worse. My kids say he sleeps the whole weekend when they are here, forgets to grocery shop, never makes meals. He doesn't seem to be going into the office much. The last time Anna and Evan were here, 2 days ago, their dad could barely lift his head off the pillow. Evan tried to take him to the hospital, but Peter refused, got angry and snapped at him. Then he vomited onto the bathroom floor, threw a washcloth over it, and went back to bed. No one has been able to reach Peter since Thursday morning. I've come here to check on him, to make sure he's okay and take care of him if he isn't. I turn down the hallway where the bedrooms are located. Peter, I call again. Peter, I'm coming down the hall to your bedroom, okay? His bedroom is at the end of the hallway. Its door faces me and it's open, but I can't see anything except a corner of the bed and a cluttered night table. I walk past my son's bedroom with its one orange wall and IKEA bed, past Anna's old bedroom, one wall painted deep pink and another wallpapered in a forest of blackbirds, of black trees with little blackbirds resting on branches. Someone has cut out a silhouette of a rat and pasted it onto a branch. I am nearly at his door and start calling his name again in earnest. Peter? Peter? I can see into the room. I'm coming into your room, Peter. I'm here to check on you. The covers on his bed are drawn back and I can see the crumpled white sheets. There are a few tissues in the bed with spots of blood on them. I'm starting to shake badly as I walk into the bedroom. Peter isn't in the bed, so I turn toward the master bath. Then I see him, lying face up on the floor between the bathroom and the bedroom. I stand there, unable to really understand what I'm seeing. My mind is struggling to comprehend this. That's him? What's that on his face? There's a cardboard box under his head like a pillow. I walk over and kneel down next to him. His arm is bent at the elbow and resting on his chest, a gesture he often makes, even when he is standing up. He holds his arm that way when he's making a point, pressing his thumb and first two fingers together for emphasis. Our son does the same thing. I touch Peter's arms to shake him awake. They are stiff and hard to move. His fingernails are blue. I put my hand on his chest to try and feel his heart. I suddenly remember lying in our bed when we were married, spooning, my chest up against his back, especially when I was cold or couldn't sleep. I would listen for his heartbeat, so much slower and stronger than mine, and feel safe. Now I feel nothing.
Wow. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And I want to tell you that, in our Memoir Association, we've been reading the book and I've been fielding a ton of questions from people. And one of the things one person wrote to me that they wanted to let you know for sure was that this book has started a conversation in her home that is changing her home. Yeah.
Oh, that's so gratifying. That's lovely. That's very flattering.
Because I was listening to what you were talking about, the research that you were doing, and there was still some great resistance to having the conversation. And so the book is, I think, really opening doors in that way. So,
hope so.
Help more people grab it. Joey Day, wow. A great honor to meet you virtually. Thank you for joining us at this virtual festival. If you don't know Joey Day's books, they are just like a mosaic, gorgeous characters and setting and place. I've been actually telling my memoir students to study your books because how succinctly, quickly you get to the heart of a character and also create a sense of place so swiftly. And sometimes young writers think they have to go on for 4 pages. And I said, look, he just did that in 2 sentences. So it's doable. One person said to me, yeah, but that's Joey Day. So anyway, welcome. And I just wanted to ask you about your process, about your main character, Isaiah. And I have this question I'm wondering is, what do you think Isaiah would think about what's going on in the world today? But introduce the book to everyone too, so that they know.
Isaiah Quintave is a young man, lives in the hood, East Long Beach. He is an unlicensed underground private detective. He serves his community. He is compassionate. He's intensely intelligent. And he, whatever his clients can pay is okay with him. If it's a macaroni salad or a set of radial tires, it's just whatever they can pay. I wanted to write a character who was fair, who was responsible, who was decent, who didn't find justice at the end of a gun. Isaiah seeks justice for people who cannot seek it for themselves.
What do you think that he would think about where we are today?
I would think I think he would be both horrified and elated, like everyone else. But Isaiah would focus in on individuals. He would find, or they would come to him, someone who has suffered at the hands of this kind of brutality, and he would help people as individuals. That is all he can do. That's the scope of his abilities.
He's really got this enormous heart, and that's what I took away from reading. Would you mind doing a reading right now from High Five?
Oh, from High Five.
Oh,
I was going to read from something else.
Oh, whatever you want. Whatever you want.
Okay. All right. This is from Wrecked, the third book in the series.
Okay.
I was thinking about what to read, and the police really struck me. The intensity of their emotions, the hatred, and if I were writing about bad guys, I treat them in a particular way. So, in Wrecked, the bad guy in the piece is a guy named Walzak. He's ex-CIA. He was at Abu Ghraib, so we know he's a killer and ruthless, and he did horrible things. There's a woman who has pictures of him at Abu Ghraib doing horrible things, and he has to get those pictures back. And here's his reflection. He could see the media outrage metastasizing to every country in the world. His name synonymous with cruelty, depravity, and perversion. The most excruciating part is family. They were his only source of happiness, and the only people who knew, who still saw him as a patriot, a hero, and a great human being. He loved family outings, soccer games, holidays, barbecues in the backyard. He even wore a chef's hat, cooked the hamburgers to perfection. Sorry. The thought of his darling wife, Patty, seeing him rape a helpless woman. Or his precious son Noah, knowing his father was a monster, made him want to die. He'd never been this fearful, not when the desert night was lit with tracer rounds and the mortar shells exploded so close you thought you were finished, and you could hear your fellow soldiers screaming and dying in the rubble. None of it frightened him more than the revelation of his beastly heart. There's a writer whose name I can't remember. He said that you can't really understand a bad guy until you realize he's a good guy in his own life. And I wish I'd said that.
Well, I think you show versus tell that. And when I did read that passage, it struck me so powerfully that I put it aside to give to some writers that had one-dimensional villains, to get inside their head. And I think we really feel like when we're reading your book, you are inside all of their heads, and you draw so much on your experiences, as a child growing up. Do you want to say a little bit about the inspiration for Isaiah and your growing up?
The story is not really inspiring, but I'll tell it to you anyway. I grew up in South Central, and most of my friends were Black, and I adapted to the neighborhood. I co-opted their speech and style, attitudes, musical tastes, and all of that. And those were the people, those were the friends and the situations that stuck with me, that I have an emotional attachment to. I was also in love with Sherlock Holmes. He meant a special thing to me. I read all of his stories and all of his novels. And what was really powerful for me was that he could overcome the obstacles in his life and turn away the bad guys with just his intelligence. I'm a small kid in a big neighborhood, And what it meant to me was that there was a way for a kid like me to face this world and not be afraid. When it came time to write the book, those two things just came together all by themselves. You know, and Sherlock in the Hood was born, but it was my only idea. I had no others.
Well, I've been fielding questions about your book as well, all the books. I've got some really interesting notes, and someone wanted me to reflect to you that what Sherlock Holmes was to them, you are to them what Sherlock Holmes was to you. That in other words, he sees you as an example of someone who just with smarts, really found their way and found their passion in life. And that's how he feels like he's inspired by that and by your journey.
Well,
wanted to make
thank you for me.
That on. Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to move to Jan Eliasberg. We were talking about her book before, Hannah's War. This one has a very personal place in my heart. When I grew up, my mom was a Holocaust expert. She was, many of the people were dying out at that time. They had been the adults in the Holocaust. And so my childhood was marked with listening to these stories that for some people, it was the first and last time they told these stories. So my whole worldview really was shaped by that experience. And when I was reading Hannah's War, I was so taken into that world and just so blown away by the level of craft and that you are speaking for someone who couldn't speak for herself. So I'm wondering if you could, I want to say personal thank you for bringing her story out. And if you could tell us a little bit about what got you to the point to that you had to write this book. And also I'd love to know too, what you think Hannah might think about where we're at in the world today.
Well, let me answer the last part first, because Hannah is, I discovered that the passion for science on a level of genius, which Hannah is very much like a passion for art or writing. You must know the truth. And one thing is certain, that she would be appalled at COVID-19 and how this has happened in our country and how politicized this has become.
Wow.
Because that's exactly what she saw going on in Germany. And she was there, kind of simultaneously as she and her partner were about to split the atom. And she was well aware of what that meant, although there were very many good things, atomic energy and clean energy that she knew could come out of it too. But she also could see the other potentials in it. And as somebody who was there when the Nazis literally marched into her research institute and said, this is no longer a research institute for science. This is a military weapons arm of the Third Reich. She would have been well ahead of all of us in seeing what was going to happen to this country under Trump. And the scientific part of it, I'd like to think anyway that she would be working on a vaccine and close to getting it. She
would.
Yes, well,
she'd get credit this time, right?
Well, absolutely, she would get credit. I'm still hoping she'll get credit for splitting the atom, but that's I think where I would see her now, and I I also think in terms of Black Lives Matter that she would also have a very personal attachment to that, because, you know, in writing her story, what I found fascinating was she wanted so badly to stay in Germany.
Yes. Yes.
She stayed until 1938.
Yeah. Last minute.
Really, when most people, certainly most people at that level of science had fled.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, she really saw how insidious racism is.
Mm-hmm.
She saw what the Nuremberg laws did, and they did not come down in one single, you know, decree. They chipped away and chipped away so that, you know, I think she would have seen, for example, very quickly that the immigration issue was going to escalate to where it is now. And I think she also would have seen, as it astonishes me even that I still I can't quite cope with it, that the levels of outrage that people feel about something, they seem great in the moment. And then you think it could not possibly get worse than this. But 2 years later, I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't hear anybody talking about those children in cages at the border, because there have been 50, you know, outrages since then. And so yes, she would have a lot. I don't know how much she would say, but she would certainly have a lot of observation and would be doing what she could to make the world a better place.
And I thought you really brought the world alive of how she just adapted, you know, okay, I won't buy bread after 5, or, you know, someone who's not Jewish can't sell me bread. And, you know, I just, the fear of going from the house to school, you know, which really resonated with some of the things that we're going on today, you know, the fear of just for who you are, being persecuted, not being able to do regular, you know, daily things. You brought that so palpably that I put the book down. I was, you know, it reverberated in such an immense way. Would you mind reading a section from Hannah's War?
I'd love to. So this is the prologue. It is one of 2 chapters that is in Hannah's voice, and I don't think it needs any other setup. They come for me at dawn, as I knew they would. I've slept in my clothes, and I ask if I may step into my shoes. They allow that, but nothing else. He tells me to go outside, and I do. Parked on the dirt road between my barracks and the laboratory is a vehicle the Americans quaintly call a paddy wagon, an absurdly chipper term for the dank iron trolley that will transport me from Los Alamos to the prison at Fort Leavenworth, where I will wait again, not for long, I fear, for my perfunctory trial and inevitable execution. The chain reaction leading to my death has been accelerated by my own divided heart. I see that now in a way I never could when all was theory. White chalk on blackboard, equations like pale bones scattered across scorched earth. The man I shouldn't have trusted latches the manacle around my wrist and fixes it to a hasp welded hard to the bench. I'll protect you, he says, with such earnestness it makes me smile. You're lying again. He glances over his shoulder. Sufficiently assured that no one can see us, he takes my face between his hands. I will protect you, Hannah, if I can. I think he might kiss me, but that would be a danger to both of us. He is a meticulous and cautious man by nature, skilled at the art of keeping secrets. Most lovers are. I have limited empirical evidence to support this hypothesis, having loved only 2 men, but both of them held the truth at a safe distance. Safe for them, not for me. His promise of protection, however well-intended, doesn't comfort me, so I comfort myself with equations. The distance from the laboratories in Los Alamos, New Mexico to the prison compound in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas is 874 miles. We left when dawn was still a wishful glow behind dark mountains. We are traveling, I estimate, at an average speed of 42 miles per hour, allowing for stops. Oh God, will they stop? Will they allow me that simple comfort? No, I won't think about that. The equations stay with them. I drum the fingers of my free hand, playing an invisible keyboard on the metal beside my legs. This is my habit when I run numbers, drumming my fingers on hard surfaces, desks, and tables. A distance of 874 miles at an average speed of 42 miles per hour creates a probability of 20.8095 hours of actual travel time, plus the approximately 27 minutes it would take for the MPs to force the paddy wagon to the side of the road, slide a bag over my head, and stay with the equations. I will protect you, Hannah, he said, if I can. A distance of 874 miles, leaving at dawn, allowing for the variable, if I can.
That's how it starts, and just it's a page turner. It's just a phenomenal piece of work. Some of the questions I've been getting in, from Hannah's War have to do with the topic of the panel was originally on inspiration and hope. And one person had asked me to ask you, how do you kind of have to be a hopeful person to be a writer? Because you're wanting to add to the conversation. You're wanting to, and this is for the whole panel as well. How do you sustain that hope? What gives you that ability to keep going?
I think perhaps like Hannah, I feel that I have a responsibility to give in whatever way I can to the world. And in my case, it's through my art, whether it's filmmaking or writing screenplays or writing novels. And so in a way, I can't allow the hope to die out, because I will be snuffing out my own agency. And particularly as a woman, if you don't have agency, you are in darkness and despair. And so in order to hold on to my agency, I have to see what's going on around me. I have to take it in realistically, but I find my sort of Pollyanna side is always searching for the thing I can do. When people are whining on Facebook about, this terrible thing or that terrible thing, I'm the one who says, well, we only have to flip 4 Senate seats. So, donate to this person, this person, this person. You can volunteer if you don't want to donate. I'm always trying to find whatever the proactive, hopeful thing is. Mm-hmm. And in my case, it's my creativity. That's what I have to offer, I think.
Yeah. What about for the rest of you? Do you want to speak to that concept of hope? What keeps you going?
I think what keeps me going is the knowledge that it makes a difference. I've traveled all around the country with my book, and also as a speaker for the Women's Archive Project, as an international speaker for that group. And I found that we all connect at some level to each other. There's a sense of humanity somewhere. And when I read passages from my book, for example, one passage was about being a little girl, and the projects worker, because I lived in the projects, came to our door, and she came in unannounced, did not knock, and she started searching through our house and searching through our cabinets and asking me, why did we have this and why did we have that? And she had a gentleman with her who worked in the office of the projects. And I learned then that there's something about this situation that makes me different. And so I began to investigate. I wanted to know, why was I so different? Why did the people have to hide things in their homes? Why did they have to feel that their man or the husband couldn't reside in the home in a lot of cases? And so that I began to research. So most of my work has been done through research. My book is an autobiographical memoir because I wanted to take people along with a family, generationally, going back almost to slavery and moving them through time, through the Nixon era, through the Wallace era, through Kennedy being assassinated, through wars. And I wanted to have them connect with this family so that they would get a sense of who they are through their eyes. And that was very, very important to me. And I began to learn more about myself as I did that. And so my job is to continue to work with people and find those connections. And I will do that through my writing. I'm writing children's books at this time, and I'm writing a play, and I hope to eventually do a screenwriter script for the book. So I'm very, very happy with that.
You do it beautifully, the way you take us through the different historical moments, and we do exactly that. We get bonded to this family and their struggles. Eilene, what about you? What are your thoughts on hope in this time?
Well, I think when I wrote Smacked, I wanted to start a conversation, especially in professional, like the work world, about substance use. And I wanted to raise questions about what was coming for the generation behind this one, the kids, students in college and in high school that would become the leaders and the white collar professionals, let's say, of the future. And the fact that it seemed to me from my research, and this was not scientific, but anecdotal, that a lot of them were relying on a lot of different substances to kind of get through the day and make life bearable. And I wondered why and what that was about. And so I was hoping that the book would raise those questions and allow me to talk about them. It's obviously been short-circuited by coronavirus and the pandemic, and certainly the fight for racial equality and racial justice, all of those very important things. But I think the opioid crisis is much like what Jan was saying about the children in cages, like those stories. I think the opioid crisis also now has gotten shunted to the side. And so it's a hard time. It's hard to balance. Like, do we still want to talk about that? Do I need to wait? But I think going back to school for social work also for me was kind of a hopeful thing, I guess. I thought, well, maybe I can do some good in the world that way, and also write about that. I used to write a lot about business, and I'm writing more about issues that have to do, I think, with being human, functioning in the world the way it is. I just last week had an essay in the New York Times on resilience and trauma, which was kind of a nice shift, and actually got a huge response, much bigger than I thought. But I got a lot of really nice mail from that about it helping or making people feel better or understanding what was going on. And I thought, well, that's my small, bit. So I think that's kind of, where I find hope. And I'm also an activist and participating the way I can. And, I don't know what the next thing will be for me as a writer other than these pieces and finishing grad school.
I feel like I can see sort of where you're going, and I'm really fascinated to go there with you. And we want to keep the dialogue going and help your book to just, I think it's going to help a lot of people. Now, Joe, I do want to ask you about hope, but I have to say there's some really vibrant people that are wondering about. One question that came through was, how do you pick the clients that Isaiah takes? And is there a common theme about the cases you take on? And then if you want to say anything about your sense of hope in being a writer, I'd love to hear that as well.
A lot of coming up with a bad guy is almost mechanical. You have to look forward, see what you need in the story. What do you want the bad guy to do? You know, how will he conflict with Isaiah and all the other people in his life? And when you get past that part, you can start adding emotion and background and that kind of thing. So it's, again, not inspired. I find hope in the past. When I remember people who were completely disparate making contact and finding humanity when they're not even looking for it. You know, right around the corner from my house, there was a liquor store, A&J Liquor. And the winos used to sit out there on orange crates and drink Thunderbird all day. And one of them was a man named Beck. Beck was elderly. He was very tall. He had a very dignified way of carrying himself. You know, he reminded me a little of Morgan Freeman. And Beck was always immaculate. He wore this fedora, brown fedora with a little feather in it, herringbone sport coat, shirt and tie, brown slacks with a crease in them, and brown and white spectator shoes. Beck was sharp, and he did this every day. Now, my older brother's name is Jack, so Beck called me Little Jack, and he called my mother Mrs. Jack. My mother, 5 feet tall, very prim and proper, and she, my mom didn't care who you were or where you came from. If you were mannerly, if you were a gentleman, you were okay with her. So every morning she'd go down to the bus stop, catch a bus for work, and Beck would be waiting for her. And she'd say, "Good morning, Beck, how are you?" And he'd say, "Oh, I'm old and slow, Mrs. Jack, but I'm doing all right." And Beck would stay with her until the bus came, just to see that nobody messed with her, and nobody ever did because Beck carried a gun. And I have this picture of them, you know, this tall, elegantly dressed wino, and my little mom standing at the bus stop, you know, talking like they were old friends, and maybe they were. And there was a wistfulness, you know, such a sweetness about it. And that's what I try and put down on the page, above and beyond story.
Can you say a little bit about inviting the reader in? I heard you speak a little bit about that, and I thought that was just so interesting. 'Cause one of the things we work on so much as writers is making the reader care. And you do that so swiftly. I was wondering if you could speak to that.
You know, I think it's a lot about relevant details. You know, it's to take a scene, take a place, not describe the whole damn thing, but to take those points that creates the scene in a very quick way, in a very fast way. Yeah. And the other thing is a discrepancy. Somewhere in that environment, something's not right. Like Isaiah's house in the opening lines.
Yeah.
Isaiah's house was different because the lawn was cut and the paint was fresh.
Yeah.
Now, if your house is distinguished because the paint is fresh and the lawn is cut, you are not living in a nice place.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of details that I put in to sort of intrigue you. Isaiah has a perfectly ordinary house, but he has a steel door. And you're kind of wondering, who needs a steel door? You know, who lives on the other side of that steel door? And I think those are the two main things, really, to have those relevant details that are vibrant and to create intrigue about the character.
And which you do it in a beautiful way. I know we're coming towards wrapping up, but we're getting lots of questions about what's coming up next for all of you. So if you want to speak a little bit to that, Jan, I heard you say, or maybe read, that you are working on your next book. Do you want to say a little bit about it?
Yes, well, I'll do a little tease.
Okay.
We'll just see if they do it.
Hannah's War may end up having another life in another medium. We'll see, but it's
so much
moving forward. So that's all I can say. As somebody who lived in Hollywood for 30 years, you can die of, what is it? It was a great line. The only place you can die of hope or something, because you wait and wait and wait and it doesn't happen. But, it might.
It's written very much like a movie. You can really see Joe and Jan, both of your film experience. And I think both of them are big screen. If we can ever get back to the big screen. Anyway, keep talking.
Yeah, I was definitely relating, Joe, to what you were saying about the little details, because that is completely a screenwriter's mind. It's, the poetry of the scene. Like, what is the thing that's going to just anchor you in there about that character or about that place? But I am, I actually, COVID has kind of upset all of or Eilene definitely, and my apple cart, because I was really supposed to be on a book tour right now. And so originally my next book was going to be not exactly a sequel, but a companion piece to Hannah's War. It's one of the characters who disappears probably 2/3 of the way through the book. I was going to follow her, but given that, the sales have been good, but it's not at this point a blockbuster, I rethought it, and I also was rethinking what world I want to live in myself, my imagination for the next year or two. And so I am actually working on a book that's set in the 30s, 39, but in America and in California and in the American South.
Awesome.
That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Awesome. Dr. Pope, what about you? What's coming up next for you in the writing world or whatever you're working on?
Well, coming soon in August, I plan to be the main speaker at the Women's Equality Month, and that is with Armed Services. That's going to be televised around the world, and I'm just very excited about offering my voice to women's equality. Also, I'm writing a book. It's a mystery. It's called Chalk Dust. And it's a children's book, I would say middle school kind of age. And I'm very familiar with middle school because I was the principal of a middle school. And by the way, the school was called Harriet Tubman. So I'm very interested in that $20 bill right now and what's going on there. I plan to add my voice to that. The other thing I'm doing is a documentary, which I hope will be a teaser to a screenplay about this family, and predominantly about the first Black African American to enter and win a title in the Miss America pageant. So I hope that's going forward. And I think I'm hopeful it makes a big difference what you do in this world, and as you try to help people, because now there has been a number of women who have won titles, women of color. And so I'm very pleased to feel like I was a forerunner in that. And the other thing I'd like to share is I hope to do groups with children and with adults on how to write and to interview their families so that they can begin to document their voices. I'm going to do that on YouTube. So stay tuned.
Wow, really important work. Eilene, I know you said you don't know. What do you think?
I will be promoting Smacked. I have some virtual events, and I think depending on what happens with the country and with COVID, they'll be virtual. Some later on might be in person at schools and bar associations, and zooming into book clubs and things like that.
Mhm.
My book also, like Jan, I can't say anything yet, but it's at the end stage of possibly entering into a world where it might someday be in another medium. So
Hey, listen, we have to come to the premieres of all of these.
that's like so far, but so that's kind of those
We can
negotiations are
enter
happening now.
the
Yeah.
houses, but
Yeah, so we'll see. And then I finished grad school in September. So
oh wow,
Congratulations.
thank
congratulations.
you. The oldest graduate student ever.
No,
No, no, no, no.
not at all.
And then Joe, I know you have another book in the pipeline. You want to talk a little bit about that?
I'm editing
You're editing.
now. It's called Smoke.
Yeah.
In it, Isaiah has PTSD.
Oh
He
wow.
has
Cool.
he has seen and endured so much violence, he can't deal. He has all the PTSD symptoms. He
Wow.
leaves LA. He leaves his girlfriend. He leaves his friends, travels aimlessly, and ends up in a charming small town. And he thinks, well, I'm going to stay here a while and not be IQ. But he gets involved with 2 serial killers.
Oh wow.
I tried to handle this in a different way, to not get into the gore and worshiping a weird god, but the way I handle Walzak,
Yes.
to approach them from that sort of human level.
Yeah.
The B story is about Dotson, who's the hustler's hustler. His
Mhm.
wife is sick of him being unemployed, so she gets him an internship at an advertising company downtown. He has to rein in his street side, wear a suit and tie, and
Oh my gosh.
see if he can survive in this largely white environment.
Wow.
So that's Smoke.
Oh, I can't wait. You've just given so much right there. I'm just dying to read it. And I think we mentioned also too that we're going to keep featuring these books on our website and hopefully have more dialogue with all of you. And Hannah's War is going to be our pick for this month coming up. We want you all to read it. We're going to do another event with Jan sometime in August, but we really want to encourage everyone to pick up all of your books through warwicks.com. I don't know, Jennifer, if you wanted to say a little bit about them and their support and all of that.
Yeah, we're just so honored to partner with Warwicks. They bring so many great books. They've got great book clubs and great book picks from the people who work there, which I love going on their website and seeing what Julie recommends, because Julie and I read the same books.
Mhm.
So I recommend that. Find the person at your local bookstore who reads the books you read, and then you never have to worry about what you're going to read next, right? So warwicks.com, you can get all 4 of our keynote speakers books there at warwicks.com again. Everyone, thank you so much.